Okay. So we have the age-old question. Which one is better? I mean, we all know these front-end tools, right? Angular, Vue, React. We've read numerous articles to figure out which one is better. And the thing is, this topic has been discussed way too many times. But I want to approach this subject a little bit different. Imagine you were asked this in an interview. Which is better? How would you answer that question in an interview? I'm going to try and attempt to give you the right answer to give in an interview if this was asked. And hopefully by watching this, you'll understand the power of all three of these and also get you excited about learning Vue. So, which is better? Pause the video and try to think of the answer. Now, in order to figure out which is better, which, as we'll find out, is probably not the right question, we need to learn a bit of history. I know, history lessons, but I'm going to try and make it fun. First, we had Angular, or AngularJS, and it was developed by Google in 2010. So out of these three, it's the oldest. Now, in its current stages, it's a TypeScript-based JavaScript framework. In 2016, Angular 2 came out, and it was a big change. It went from AngularJS to just Angular. But it was the original powerhouse that came out of Google, and it took the front-end development world by storm. Now, between 2010, when it first came out, and 2016, when it got updated to just Angular or Angular 2, something else came along. And that was right here, React. It was developed at Facebook, which is a pretty big competitor to Google. It was released in 2013. Now, Facebook used React extensively throughout their products like WhatsApp or Facebook or Instagram. And React was able to get a share of the Angular world because when Angular announced that they're going to make the big changes in 2016, well, React came along and gave developers a different option, a substitute. Now, Vue came into the scene in 2014, and it was created, unlike the previous ones, which was created by Google and Facebook. This one was created by a single developer. His name was Evan You, and he used to be an ex-Google employee. And he saw how Google developed AngularJS and also saw some of the parts that React did well. And he tried to combine these two into something hopefully better. All right, but that's enough of a history lesson. Let's talk about what each one does. And in this case, I want to use a kitchen example. It's my favorite example to talk about these tools. Angular, you can think of it as an entire kitchen. It's a framework. What does it all mean? It means it's feature rich. Everything is built in. If you need something, Angular usually has a built-in solution. For example, if you need to do an HTTP request, you need to have different routes on your pages. All the tools necessary for you to build an app, Angular gives it to you so that you as a developer, you don't have to make the decision of what tool to use. Angular has everything built in. If you want to cook a pizza, well, you just use the Angular Kitchen, and the Angular Kitchen gives you all the tools that you need to build or to bake that pizza. React is the exact opposite of Angular, and that's why React was able to capture some of the initial developer excitement that came from Angular. Because React had a different philosophy. React said, hey, here's the oven. All I'm going to give you is the oven. And in this case, the oven meant just the view, just the UI layer to build front-end applications. React had less features, but with less features, you had more options. You can pick the fridge that you want to use. You can pick the stove, the table, the cutting board, whatever you wanted to. You can mix and match and just use the React oven. So this meant more options, more community-built projects around React. And as a developer, you have to manage everything. The decisions that you make to build out your pizza have to be good with React, but you get to pick what routing library you use, how you want to do HTTP requests, how you want to manage state. In React, you pick. Now Vue, like I said before, wanted the best of both worlds. So Evan You came up with this. They gave you the fridge and the oven, but none of the other stuff. For example, Vue gives you routing, state management. Those are built in. But some aren't, that you still get to decide how you want to build it, like forms. And we'll learn all about that throughout the course. So we understand this. All of these tools, frameworks, and libraries, at the end of the day, what they do is allow us to bake this pizza. And in this case, the pizza is the UI, the user interface, the website, the web app that we want to do. So all of these three do one main thing, and that is UI and DOM manipulation. Change something on the website to make it look interactive so that users can interact with our websites. And they provide the tools for you to do that instead of just plain old JavaScript. So those are the similarities, right? They want to change the UI, manipulate the DOM to make apps interactive. The other thing that they have in common is this. For example, my website over here, zerotomastery.io. It's built around the idea of components. And Angular, React, Vue, all of them have these principles in mind. For example, when we talk about components, it's the idea that apps are built around little blocks that come together to build a page. For example, this is a component, this is a component. This course card is a component, this button is a component. And what a developer does is we build out components and put it all into a page to have a functioning page. So you can start looking at things as components. This is a component. The image of a student is a component. The text is a component. These buttons are components. All three of these frameworks and libraries allow you to build components and manipulate the DOM to make interactive apps. All right. This video is getting long and you're already getting bored, and come on, Andre, just tell us which one is better. That's what you're here for, right? Well, if somebody asks you this in an interview, how should you answer it? That's how we started the video, right? Well, when somebody asks you this, you should say back, what does the team look like? Let's talk about this. Somebody in an interview asks you which one's better, and you ask back, what does a team look like? Why is this a great answer to an interview question? You see, at the end of the day, the ingredients to build our apps is our programming ability. It's JavaScript. All of these are built on top of JavaScript. So our ingredients is the JavaScript, is the code that you write. That's what matters the most. Good ingredients lead to good pizzas. Well, not really, right? You also need good cooks, and that's what you are. You are a developer, you are a coder that is able to take this JavaScript, use the framework like Vue to allow us to bake and produce really nice applications. The ingredients, yes, they matter, but we have JavaScript for that. Your job as a cook is to develop, to code things in a nice way to build nice applications. So when you see things like, hey, which is more performant? Most of the time, it doesn't really matter. What matters is how you build the application, how you code, how you structure your code, which affects the performance and how your app does. And that's what we're going to teach you in this course. So the question, what does the team look like, matters a lot. Because you should pick the framework or library that the team is most familiar with. If you have a bunch of React developers, you should probably pick that one because all those developers are productive with React. Why learn something else? Or maybe you have a massive team of hundreds and hundreds of developers. Well, Angular is one of the most mature frameworks out of the lot. And although it has a steep learning curve, Angular is a good choice because, well, you have guardrails. You have a whole kitchen for your developers, for all your developers to make sure they do things the same way, in a standard way. So Angular is great for those big companies with lots of developers, but those that don't necessarily want to make the decisions of how to place each of these tools together. Angular just says, hey, here's one way to do it. React might be great, for, let's say, startups or people that want flexibility. If you trust your development team to make the right decisions, to combine different libraries and tools together with React to build something great, well, you should pick React. React has a lot of options, but be warned. I've been on numerous projects where React was used and mismanaged. Because you give developers so many choices, they end up picking the latest, hippest library and tools and mix everything together and create a cluster of complexity and a mess. So React can lead to some really poorly built application. And this is why I'm excited to teach Vue here. Vue mixes the best of both worlds. Vue, as you'll see, is going to get you really productive. It's going to allow teams to build things fast. It's going to provide some really good tools like routing, like state management out of the box, so you don't have to pick and choose, and you know exactly what the best way to do something is. It's also backed by some really big companies like Alibaba and Baidu, but it's a community-built project or community-supported projects, unlike the other ones that are backed by Google or Facebook. They really focus on developer productivity. They're not really worried about what's best for Google, what's best for Facebook and their products. They're worried about what can they make developers do and how can they do it in the most efficient, best way possible. Whew, that was a lot of talking. But I promise we'll get into some coding. Hopefully this was useful. Next time you get asked the question in an interview, what's the best? All you have to say is, what does a team look like? It all depends. And in this course, we're going to learn why Vue might be a great option for your team, for yourself, and for your future startup. So, enough talking, let's get into it.